Sup, it's Sydney. I'm sorry about this whole shadow situation. Here's the sitch, it never stops raining here. Today I have the long-awaited, highly requested, comprehensive video of how to get into college. Brought to you by me, a girl who got into college. I so kindly split up this video into 4 sections in case you want to skip around. The first section will be the basic background section, like where I'm going and why. Then the actual application process section, which is just so fun. The third portion will consist of my stats, so my GPA, SAT, and then the last piece is just going to be about all the other stuff on my application, so my essays, my extracurriculars. I also asked you guys on my Instagram what you wanted to see in this video and then took the most frequently asked questions and just kind of sprinkled my answers throughout this video. I can't promise this is going to be helpful, but I'm trying my best. Okay, let's start. I'm gonna fly.
Stop it. Get some help.
Through this background information because I already included a lot of it in this video, which I will have linked down below. So if you want more details on why I chose my college and everything, go to that video. However, in case you don't care enough to watch that video, which is pretty likely and I don't blame you, I'm just gonna go through it real quick. I will be attending Penn State University, as you can see. I applied to 4 schools in total, which were Penn State University, obviously, the University of Tennessee, the University of Florida, and James Madison University. I actually got accepted into all 4 of those colleges, so that's kind of where I stand for admissions. My current intended major of study at Penn State is supply chain in the Smeal College of Business. I say current because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what if I have commitment issues to my major? We can't predict this. I do want to quickly mention that I was accepted to a program at Penn State that kind of mirrors like an honors business program. I threw that in solely because it added a lot more time to my application because I had to write like 4 more essays. I'm 876% positive that literally no one cares about that, so we're gonna move on to the application process. Tons of you guys had questions on the overall application process timeline, but then more specifically when I applied to all of my colleges, so I'm going to touch on that first. I applied to all of my schools just a little bit before their early action deadline, and I would say there's 3 main deadlines, at least that I'm aware of. Typically there's an early decision deadline, which means if you get accepted into a school you applied early decision for, you are obligated to attend that school, like legally. Supposedly you do have the best chance of getting in if you apply early decision because schools really love themselves and they like to see people that really want to go there, so they're kind of egotistical like that. But I personally did not apply anywhere early decision because I was not set on any school, and that is just stressful. Then there's the early action decision deadline, and this is what I did and what I would recommend to all of you. I would explain this as your best chance of getting into schools without being committed to just one like you are in early decision, and also it's earlier than the regular decision deadline, so you kind of have to be prepared. You also usually hear back from colleges earlier if you do apply early action, so that's another reason why it's great. I think regular decision is pretty self-explanatory. You just apply right before the last deadline and then you wait. As for when all those deadlines are, I can't really tell you because it varies from college to college, but all of my early action deadlines were in November. To stay organized with all of these deadlines, I would recommend making a college grid, which I'm looking at mine right now. I created this so I could easily compare each of the colleges that I thought I was going to apply to. I have the application deadline, which I applied a lot earlier than some of these deadlines just because I wanted to be done with college applications. A lot of you guys asked about application fees, and I would say that the range that I have on this grid is kind of a good expectation as to how much you're going to have to pay to just apply to the school. I also have listed whether the school required an essay or letter of recommendation, or if I needed to send in my transcript. One thing that I want to go into a bit more detail about that was on the grid was whether or not I had to send in a transcript, because this turned out to be a fiasco, my friends. It used to be that your school would send in your transcript to colleges, but in recent years, some colleges don't want your transcript right away and are instead wanting you to submit your own grades and self-report them and then later send a final transcript. I don't know why. Both Penn State and Florida required me to self-report all of my grades. This means that I, Sydney, just a young girl who has no idea what she's doing, had to go in on those two applications and type in the grade that I got in the class, what the class was called, the level the class was at, like if it was AP or college prep or whatever, all that stuff for all 4 years of high school. If you have to do this, it's going to be very time consuming and it's also very tedious and mundane. But just make sure that you're double checking everything, because the last thing you want to do is get rejected from a college because you accidentally put in that in college prep algebra 2 you got an A instead of a B. You know, I'm not trying to make you freak out or anything, but I'm just bringing this to your attention because I didn't know that I would have to do this. And quick story time before we move on to the next topic. My application process was so bad. I almost got automatically rejected from the 2 schools that required me to send transcripts. So at my school, you have to go into the counseling office a month before your application deadline. So for me, this would be in October, and request for your transcripts to be sent out to whatever colleges you're applying to that require it. I applied in November and I requested my transcripts in September. So in case we aren't good with the calendar months, that's 2 months in advance. Well, my school forgot about me and didn't send my transcripts, and then I get this email. The email from James Madison basically explains that I did everything in the application process except for sending my transcripts, and this was all due on November 1st, and I got this email on November 13th. Let's just say I spent many mornings in the counseling office very angry, with a plastered smile on my face, asking them to please send my transcripts, and I spent a lot of time on the phones with universities begging them to let me send my transcripts even though the deadline had passed. It's not my fault my high school was stupid. No offense, I graduated from there, so. I feel like everyone that makes this type of video and shares their stats is a little Einstein in the making, and your girl is not Harvard bound. So I'm a little bit nervous to put this part online because although I know it doesn't like define me as a person or whatever, people just interpret these scores differently. So some people might look at these scores and be like, wow, she's kind of stupid. And other people might be like, oh my gosh, I wish my GPA was like that. So it's all very subjective and I'm not a fan of it, okay? I took the SAT twice, once in December and once in June. And I'm just gonna share my June SAT score because I improved slightly in all categories of it, so the other one's kind of useless. My total score was a 1230, with my score breakdown being a 640 in the English, so like reading, writing section, and a 590 in the math section. By the way, the SAT is now scored out of 1600, in case you're wondering. I know that changed somewhat recently, I think a few years ago. Also, I took this with the essay, which is scored out of 24, and I got a 21 out of 24, and in each of the 3 breakdowns, which are reading, analysis, and writing, I got 7s across the board. Some things I want to say and tips I want to give about standardized tests like the SAT. Firstly, I really regret not taking the ACT as well. For some reason, my brain just decided to take the SAT twice and be done, but I actually found out afterwards that my strengths kind of coincided with the ACT as well. I didn't try out the ACT, so I don't know if it was a better fit for me or not, but it could have been, and I could have gotten a better score. I kind of wish that I tried the SAT after my sophomore year because I had completed all of the math sections at that point, and also I had completely forgotten about geometry. I was just so rusty since I took that freshman year. So I think that I should have taken that earlier, or I should have actually studied and reviewed some of those concepts, which I didn't do. Since I'm a very effort-based student versus just pure natural-born intelligence, I feel like that's also kind of why I'm not super proud of my SAT, because I didn't really put any effort into it. Like, I didn't study. Moving as far away from standardized tests as possible, because they're trash, we're gonna talk about my GPA.
Wow!
My school calculates your grade point average in 2 different ways, and those are weighted and unweighted. Unweighted is your pretty standard 4.0 scale, so if you got all A's, then you would have a 4.0 unweighted GPA. Your weighted GPA accounts for any advanced/honors classes you took along with AP classes. My school uses the term advanced instead of honors, but they mean the same thing. So this means that if you took an advanced class and got a B in it, it would be the same as getting an A in a regular class. My cumulative GPA after all 4 years of high school was a 4.2261 precisely. My unweighted GPA isn't on here for some reason, which is very odd, but I remember it being a 4.85 during my last quarter of senior year, so it's around there. I took a total of 9 advanced classes and 3 AP classes over the course of my high school career. So that was about 22% of my life wrapped up into a relatively short section about my grades and what I looked like on paper. In this last part, I just want to touch on everything else that was in my application. First, I'm just going to list some extracurriculars that I was in to give you guys some ideas of stuff that you may want to include. I played field hockey all 4 years of high school, so I played on a school team and a club team. I was in 2 business clubs during high school. I participated in one of the business clubs for just freshman year, so it wasn't super important, but I still threw it on there. The other business club I was in my sophomore year and onward, so I actually got 2 leadership roles in that club that I feel like are pretty important to put on. So if you can try to join a club early on and work your way up to a leadership role, I would do that because I think it looks pretty nice and you do gain a lot of experience from it. I was secretary of the club my junior year, and then I was co-president my senior year. And I also had a lot of awards/recognitions from this club because it was a competitive club where we would compete at the regional, state, and national level. I would also include any jobs you may have had in high school. I put on mine, which is YouTube, which was really hard to explain, by the way. I didn't know if people would really get it if they read my application, but I still put it on because it did take up a large portion of my time in high school. I think that's really what this section is all about, is just showing the college what all you've been spending your time on that's productive and cool, and they just want to kind of know you a bit better. Maybe. They also may not care, you know. Some colleges might require you to elaborate on any community service that you did, so I would just have that kind of logged and written down as well. As far as essays go, for just the general normal application, I kind of lucked out because my personal statement that I wrote that I needed for the University of Florida also worked with one of the Common App essay questions, so I only had to write one thing and I sent it to all of my colleges. You're probably not going to be able to do this for every college you apply to just because some require a very specific response, but if you can, I would try and look at the prompts in advance to see if you can bend them to benefit you and be sent to multiple colleges. I know it's super hard to pick a topic, especially for the prompts that are what makes you unique? I don't know. But surprise, surprise, I ended up writing mine about YouTube. Aww. Who could have guessed? Sorry, it's the only thing exciting that I do in my life. My tips for writing a good essay, though, would be to take something that you're passionate about, but don't write about your whole overall experience with it, and instead pick something very specific, like an event or a time that you felt a certain way, and kind of tell a story. Although that whole essay was really broad and open-ended as far as the prompt goes, I do have some experience with more specific prompts because the business program that I applied to and got into that I mentioned earlier required me to write 4 essays. My tips for those would be to take a direct stance on the prompt and maybe have one of your friends or a parent read the prompt as well, because you may take away different things. This way you'll kind of know if you have to research or if they want you to interject your own personal story or just what exactly they're looking for, because colleges love to be super vague. Some concluding thoughts: it's stressful, but you will get through it. I never thought that I was going to, and here I am. If you get rejected or waitlisted or are just feeling generally discouraged or nervous about your application, Just remember that these people aren't going to know you after just a few minutes of glancing over your application. Sometimes they're just not going to see the potential you see in yourself or that other people close to you see. And I mean, they're just reading a bunch of applications in a day. They could be tired or like not have their coffee or something. Just don't let that define you. I kind of just exposed myself here, so I hope this video was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. Bye!